Zach Wilson goes from unbenchable to inactive in a span of 72 hours. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Breaking news, Robert Saleh just met with the media, lets everybody know Zach Wilson not only benched, he will not be the number 2 on Sunday against the Bears. He will not be active. He will be watching in street clothes. Obviously, a surprising announcement, A, that it's this early, and B, there were a lot of folks, myself included, who expected Wilson to start with a short leash on Sunday. That will not happen. It is Mike White as your starting quarterback with Joe Flacco backing him up. And Robert Saleh tried to make this a positive thing about Zach Wilson, that this is a chance for Zach to take a step back, catch his breath. He's out of whack. They have some things to work on, and said repeatedly, Robert Saleh probably said a dozen times, this is not just about Zach Wilson. Do you know who Robert Saleh is benching? Just Zach Wilson. This is about Zach Wilson. It's about his play. It's about his comments after the game. I have no doubt that played a role in this. Saleh had to show the other 52 guys in that locker room that the work they're putting in matters. And when one guy dismisses an entire side of the ball, he's got to take action. And you can say all you want that there's overreaction to Zach Wilson's comments, and there may very well be. There may have been people waiting in the weeds to criticize Zach Wilson. I'm not one of them. Love the kid out of BYU. Might be the only prospect I've ever seen before the draft where I watched every single throw. Not 5 or 6 games. Sat down and watched every single throw the kid made in college. I fully signed off as a guy that I thought, like they care that I signed off. But I was saying, with many others that I thought that he should be the guy they take if he's on the board. They did. I've defended him for quite a while. It wasn't until a few weeks ago when we were seeing that there was no production and he was being carried by the defense and Breece Hall. And I see people saying, oh, so because he's not Patrick Mahomes, he's not a starting quarterback. Listen, at this point, I'd rather Patrick Ewing. Okay? He has been terrible. No one is saying Zach Wilson should be benched because he's not playing at an all-pro level. People are saying he should be benched because he looks lost. He can't find the end zone. And the only reason he was playing well several weeks ago was Breece Hall. Yes, he had some games where he kind of sort of managed the offense and didn't turn in, wasn't a complete disaster. But other than a couple of minutes against Pittsburgh, at no point in this season did you look at Zach Wilson and say, man, look at this dude carry this team right now. No, it just didn't happen. And you can be upset all you want, and you can say, but Chris Sims said this and Kurt Warner said that. Well, what did Robert Saleh say? And as I said, the locker room comments have got to be taken into consideration, the post-game comments and the reaction in the locker room. Have you seen a single former player, former coach, current player, anyone come out and say Zach Wilson was in the right with his post-game comments? Look at the list. Steve Young, BYU alum who loved him, couldn't defend it. Booger McFarland went after him for it. Rex Ryan, RG3, Will Compton. You had Jordan Lewis, Dallas Cowboys cornerback, Richard Sherman. You're talking guys who are anywhere from career NFL backup to Hall of Fame Super Bowl champion and everything in between, coming out and saying Zach Wilson. Chris Long was on the Rich Eisen show, and he said, look, I don't like the clickbait mentality. I'm a former player, and I don't like going after guys, but I have less than zero sympathy for Zach Wilson right now. He's a kid who said some dumb stuff. It's unfortunate. You hope he learns from it and grows from it. Will he? I don't know. Nobody knows. Now all we do is sit and wait and see what happens with the kid. But you got to figure quarterback is now in the equation for this offseason. It almost seems like a foregone conclusion. And if you've been on Twitter and you've seen Scott Mason play like a Jet and a million other folks, I've mentioned it once or twice, Jimmy Garoppolo, is there a more perfect situation? You have a guy who has been to a Super Bowl, who is guaranteed to be a free agent. The contract he reworked with the 49ers prohibited them from franchise tagging him. He cannot be tagged. He will be a free agent. He is playing at a very high level right now. You bring him over to the Jets, Jimmy Garoppolo on the Jets right now, this team is in first place. And it's not even a conversation. So you have to imagine somebody like Jimmy G, maybe Carr shakes loose in Las Vegas. And listen, he's not on the same level as these guys. But I would argue this team right now with somebody like Gardner Minshew is in first place. With Minshew's got like 40-some career touchdown passes and 16 picks? Like the guy doesn't... Everyone loves Zach Wilson because he doesn't turn... Or not everyone, but those defending Zach Wilson, he doesn't turn it over. He doesn't turn it over. Yeah, he also doesn't get it in the end zone. Can we get a guy who does both those things? Don't turn it over and score touchdowns? Because that seems like a more desirable situation. So Zach to the bench. He's going to sit. And listen, I hope like hell the kid works through it. But as I did an episode a couple days ago, and I said that the way Zach Wilson conducted himself, nobody's going to believe that he's a changed man after a week or two. If he comes out and apologizes and says, "Oh, that was stupid. I shouldn't have said that. My bad." Everyone's going to know, God, dude, what you said, uncensored, unfiltered a few days ago, that's you. That's what you feel. Like maybe you need some time to sit back and watch and see the work that goes into being successful in the NFL to go, wow, I really did let that defense down. And Justin Fields, right? Everyone's heard about it by now, went into the locker room after the Bears lost the other night and apologized to his team. And they cut him off and said, "No, man, it's not on you. Don't worry." And that probably would have happened with Zach Wilson too. Guys just want you to take accountability. Not to say I'm not, well, my receivers don't run the right routes and it's windy out and no, I don't feel like I let anybody down. You can't do that. I mean, in that moment, like when Zach Wilson said that, some people were saying, "Oh, this is being blown out of proportion." No, it wasn't. You don't stand up as the quarterback and say what he said. And Robert Saleh from the podium today, it was almost as if, and I'm sure he's talked to Zach Wilson about this, but it felt like he was speaking to Zach Wilson from the podium today. He said, "Look, when you're the quarterback, you stand up here, you take all the bullets. Even when it's not your fault, it's your fault. Okay, Zach? You got it? Like, you see what I'm doing here?" So he's trying to send a message, both by benching him and then by going up there and showing him how it's done. Take accountability, take responsibility. Now, as I meant, the Booger McFarland thing, I saw, Booger McFarland's like, well, he came from money, so he's never had to, he's never had to. I mean, listen, I didn't live with Zach Wilson growing up. I don't know what the kid went through, but to just assume that because he had money, he's never had to assume responsibility, that's a little bit crazy to me. Especially when you're a guy who's a multimillionaire sitting on a panel with like 5 other multimillionaires. And are we now saying that none of the guys there and no NFL players have kids who take accountability because they're wealthy? I thought that was a below-the-belt shot. However, Zach Wilson did, whatever the reason, whether it was the money, whether it was just the way the kid is wired, he didn't take responsibility, and he was wrong for that. And now we're seeing the consequences. Robert Saleh is doing the right thing. Fully expected Wilson to start on Sunday with a very short leash, maybe even before the half. If I thought maybe they go out there if the Jets, only manufacture a field goal in the first quarter and a half and punt a few times. I thought you pull Zach. Didn't even make it that far, which tells me that the locker room thing is even a bigger issue, and that Robert Saleh had to put his foot down and make a decision to show the rest of the team that this isn't acceptable. This mindset, this mentality, what he said, how he's behaving, and how he's playing. That's the other part of this, is that while myself and many others said after the game, the post-game presser was worse than the on-field performance. And it was. But the on-field performance is also terrible. So it's not as if he's playing well and he said something dumb and you're benching him. He probably saves his skin if he goes up there and says the right things. He didn't say the right things. Now he's going to be held accountable. So Zach Wilson to the bench. Jets will face the Bears at home. Fans will be pumped up. And listen, Mike White. I see everybody, I don't think anybody's under the illusion that Mike White is a franchise quarterback, or that Mike White's going to, lead this team to the promised land and be under center for the next 10 years. And I loved Mike White out of Western Kentucky. I tweeted about him a million times. Take him on day 3, developmental guy. He had a good deep ball accuracy at Western Kentucky. Completion percentage was through the roof, threw an accurate ball, all that stuff. Lack mobility, long wind up. So he wasn't perfect, but I was like, hey, bring this guy along for a developmental player. Jets end up signing him. Had the great game against Cincinnati last season. But here's the thing. What the Jets need right now is just someone to move the damn ball and get in the end zone a couple times. So even if Mike White goes out there and throws 3 picks, If he plays the Patriots and he can get 10 points and you win that game, of course, yeah, 10-10 would have been a tie, but you guys get the point. Get a quarterback who can move the ball and put it in the end zone. Zach Wilson is on pace for 8 touchdown passes this year. 8. In 2022, good quarterbacks do that in 2 games. He's on pace for 8 on the year, and people are defending him. Like, oh, they're 5-2 with him. So what? Who are these people who give quarterbacks credit for a team's record? Especially when the quarterback is playing terrible football. As I said the other day, Tim Tebow had a winning record with the Broncos a few years back. Granted, he was completing 45% of his passes, and they were beating everybody 6-3 with last-second field goals and, 10-7 with miracle last-second touchdown runs. Like, that defense was being so taxed, and it was all on them. Everything was on them. Create turnovers, win the field position battle, and get into field goal range so we could win this game 9-6. You think that's a sustainable, that a coaching staff, a front office sits down and says, hey, listen, if we can draft the quarterback number 2 and he can lead us to some 12-9 wins, man, we're set. We won't have to make any moves then. We'll have our quarterback. No. The guy stinks right now, as evidenced by the fact that the coaches have now sat him down. And as I said, he'd get away with the stupid stuff he said if he was playing well. But the play and the comments are both terrible. So you now take a quarterback you took number 2 overall. He goes to the bench. And now, like I said, what does this open up in the offseason? I think a lot of that's going to depend on how Zach conducts himself over the final 7 games. Listen, we're all hoping for a playoff run. If the Jets get knocked out of the playoff picture at some point, say week 15, 16, say they lose a few in a row, then sure, go back to Zach. Let him sit for a month. Let him watch. Go to practice every day, just work on his mechanics. And his mechanics are out of whack. I get that. But how does a guy go from completing 64, 65% of his passes? And listen, I get people are going to say, but Glenn, that was college. Glenn, of course he was completing a lot of his passes in college. Yeah, the passes he's missing in the NFL aren't difficult passes. It's not like you can say, look, Glenn, the window is smaller. No, he's missing guys who have no defenders anywhere near them. I feel like we said this about him last year. Actually, I recall saying this about him last year. The Jets are asking him on some of these plays to play catch, pitch and catch. We're going to get a guy wide open behind the defense, or we're just going to have you throw a screen a few feet to your left, and he's not hitting these passes. So don't talk to me about, well, it's a different game in the NFL. That's why his completion percentage is down, because those windows close faster. There are no windows. Somebody knocked down the damn wall and left Denzel Mims wide open behind the secondary, and he didn't do anything with it. Somebody asked him to throw a pass to Braxton Berrios, standing over to his left with no defenders anywhere near him. Throws the ball 5 feet over his head. That's not about NFL defenses being faster and windows closing quicker. That's just about this guy doesn't know how to throw a football right now. How did he forget to throw a football? I mean, you can say it whatever you want about the Jets coaching staff, but I guess we'll find out on Sunday. If Mike White goes out there and he's launching screen passes into the, 5-10 feet over receivers' heads, we'll know that this coaching staff doesn't know how to work with the quarterback's mechanics. If Mike White does know how to complete a screen pass, well, then perhaps Zach Wilson isn't taking the coaching on very well. So we'll find out what happens, but all the Jets need from Mike White right now, be functional, move the ball, get us in the damn end zone. He's probably going to turn it over a couple times, but get us in the end zone a few times too, because this defense right now is good enough to win. You can get away with a couple of turnovers. I mean, look, the Bears, Justin Fields might not play, which would leave Trevor Siemian in a quarterback. You would have to imagine. I mean, now listen, if Fields plays, you would expect him to run for 200 yards against this Jets defense the way they've looked against opposing quarterbacks running the ball this year. However, if he does play, if he's got this fracture in his shoulder, non-throwing, of course, but even then, you would have to imagine he's not going to be running as much. They're not going to want him taking as many hits. We'll see if that happens. But if Fields doesn't play, and it's Trevor Siemian, if the Jets give up more than 10 points, I'd be shocked. Again, there's always the caveat, but unless it's off of completely blown coverage, or a turnover that gets run back, or a special teams breakdown, But really, if the Jets just play their game and stick to their fundamentals, I don't see a team led by Trevor Siemian scoring a bunch of points. So if Mike White goes out there and throws a couple of picks, but also throws a couple of touchdowns, then the Jets should win the game. And Mike White, with all he did last year, he didn't do it. He didn't have the weapons. We keep talking about, let's see how much better Zach Wilson plays with the improved weapons. A, he didn't. And B, you could argue he got worse. But now Mike White, listen, what Mike White did last year, he was doing with a pedestrian supporting cast. Now Mike White's got Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. No word on Corey Davis yet. What the hell is going on there? He was day-to-day 5.5 weeks ago, and he still hasn't practiced. So, some red flags there. But Corey Davis, hopefully will be back soon. Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore, that's going to be a big one. I'll tell you, if Elijah Moore goes out there this week and gets himself 6-7 catches for 80, 90, 100 yards, boy, he's going to be doing some celebrating. And rightfully so. He's not had the targets. He's good enough to get them. So we're going to find out, we may find out quite a bit about this Jets team on Sunday. Mike White, the man under center, Sauce Gardner banged up. He's expected to be back. No issues there. But we will cover this and more on Jet Nation Live tonight. Myself and Dylan Terraman. Jet Nation Live. We'll tweet out the link. Be sure to tune in. Log in. We'll be on Facebook Live. Comment. Get involved in the show. And there's plenty to talk about, folks. We should be cautiously optimistic, a little bit excited. I don't know. Listen, better quarterback play is the goal. And while Mike White does not have the same ceiling Zach Wilson has, right now Zach Wilson is a mess. So if you want to say long-term Mike White's not the better player, I have no issue with that. But right now, today, let's see if Mike White throws for more than 2 yards in the second half. And then we'll talk about whether or not he's the better player. So that'll do it for now. More to come tonight. Zach Wilson inactive. Mike White is the man.